All right, who wants to be the first person with a question? All right, we got Rick over here.
What are the symptoms of Boxwood Blight on the ground covers or other host plants?
Okay,
It's live.
okay. So the slide what I showed you on the ground cover, that was the again greenhouse and growth chamber assay. So what they had looked clearly after the inoculation of the tissues, if again the Boxwood blight was sporulating or not. So my knowledge, they were creating only the lesions around the sporulation area, but I don't think we have a clear symptom and sign description on those from the assay. So.
I kind of have a little bit of a follow-up. What should we be really concerned about this?
We need to be concerned. So definitely one of the again 2020 publication from Dr. Chuan Hong's lab demonstrated again some of the ground covers, which included like 18 different ground covers. They had actually exhibiting sporulation of Boxwood blight pathogen. So it is a concern. So it means we have alternative hosts for the pathogen.
Okay, very good. All right.
Okay, now I have two questions. One is, okay, if you can't, or I know that Boxwood doesn't like to have competitions with the roots. So if you're not planting Pachysandra as a ground cover in a large area with Boxwoods in it, what would you use? Nothing? Okay, go.
If you remember the picture I showed of the boxwood roots I had pulled up, and so the boxwood roots don't stop at the drip line. A lot of people tend to think it does, but it actually extends about a third beyond the drip line, and so it depends on the size of the plant. There's a lot of exceptions to that, but general rule of thumb is a third. So that's the most important real estate for boxwood. That's where all the feeder roots are. That's where all the water and nutrient uptake is, right there. So if you're planting bulbs, planting ground covers, planting annuals, you're cutting, tearing, wounding boxwood roots. And so you don't want to go in there at all. That's important real estate for the boxwood. Leave it alone, just mulch it, plant other things somewhere else.
Okay.
One of the things that
I have another question.
one of the things Boxwood have a kind of like a different soil pH. You need to try to plant something probably the same requirement you would the Boxwood with soil pH and stuff in there.
Thank you, DeBooker. I have a question about English boxwoods. I've got like 6 boxwoods altogether. They've been planted for years. They're about 5 foot tall. And then I found out that one of them, the tag says English, Inglish. Is that a legitimate English boxwood?
There was an English Inglis. Yes. Yes,
Okay.
it is.
And now it has, I noticed yesterday, it looked like it had leaf miner. So what do I do? Spray it?
So
Call somebody?
we talked about we use English as an indicator for blight. The most susceptible variety we've seen for leaf miner is, we call it sometimes Elizabeth Inglis because it's so close to English. And so my dad started calling it Elizabeth Inglis a few years ago. But anyway, it's in the same cultivar. So it is extremely susceptible to, we're actually propagating them right now to use as source plants for leaf miner. In other words, to put them out in our plantings to provide leaf miner to our experimental plants to see which ones, just to get some visuals of which ones we think will do well for the leaf miner. So, but that's not to say you can't control it.
Yeah, that's what I want to do.
Absolutely, you can control it, yeah. Well, and I don't know how you feel about this, but the neonicotinoids are very, merit granular is extremely effective on it. And if you do it at a time of the year when you don't have pollinators or running around, it's extremely effective. And sometimes even on a very susceptible variety, you can get 2 to 3 years of no leaf miner.
Thank you.
So yeah, the first thing I would do is go over resistant varieties if you can find any. Then the second thing would be you could use, of course, the neonics. One would be merit, imidacloprid, active ingredient. Read and follow the label. The best time to apply that is going to be next month into April. You get about 12, 13-month control. The next one is going to be dinotefuran, which is a systemic. It gets into the vascular system of the plant real quick. It gives you a quick burst. Then it goes back down. It has to be reapplied. So those are 2 that you can use. Read and follow the label.
What's the common name for that light? What would be the common name? Like Bayer product? You said Bayer.
For the Bayer product is bio-advanced tree and shrub insecticide, right? And then for dinotefuran, it's Safari is the one that I know.
Yeah, I just want to say something about the name. That may not be a valid name, but I have seen that one listed, so you might not have that in your registration information. We're talking about the one that's very susceptible to the boxwood leaf miner, Ingalls or whatever. Ingalls?
Ingalls.
Yeah. Is that? I'd just like your comment on that real quick.
Well, the English versus Ingles, the problem there is one's a common name and one's a cultivar name. Okay. So if you use cultivar names, say it's a fruticosa instead of English, then it's fruticosa can't be confused with English. So, but INGLIS is a legitimate cultivar, if that's your question, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have several of the cone-shaped Green Mountain boxwoods. They're planted about 5 years ago, and they're beautiful, but they're getting much bigger than what we thought they would get. They're up about 4.5 feet tall. When is the best time to prune them? And do I selectively just cut out some of them to keep them low? Because I've been just trimming them with hand trimmers, but trying to cut them back and unfortunately wait until after they bloom. And I know that's probably not the best time. So I just need to, how do I control them now?
Yeah, regarding the Green Mountain, conical shape is not the natural shape, so that was in production that it was pruned that way. Green Mountain, left to its own devices at 50 years, is 6 foot tall, 7 foot wide. Left on. So what you're doing is creating a pseudo bonsai, and so shearing ain't going to work. And so what you have to do is to use hand pruners and cut off 3 and 4 or 5 years of growth and go back and just do like 1/5 of all the canopy and just keep doing 1/5 and slowly bring it down that way to contain any size you want. Do that by pruning, not by shearing, and you can work with it as a bonsai because that's what you're advocating, and that's fine.
It could be moved as well.
Let me say something while my name is Bogatili and I work for the Extension Service. If you think you have Boxwood Blight, and before you try to move that, you need to make sure that you cut a piece off and put in some plastic bag before you try to move that and get it to us, but we can send it out to the lab. You might not have it, but it's good to know that you got it kind of contain, because you don't want to try to spread it when you're doing that. And we need to send it out to Leslie, somebody, whatever, before you start trying to move that around, because you don't want to spread the disease.
My question's about flowering, and this may have been mentioned in the previous presentation because unfortunately I had to leave. I had an appointment. But I have Justin Brower Boxwood, and I have Green Mountain, I think, and they're about 8 years old, and I want to know when they bloom. I have never seen any flowers on them.
I don't remember the ploidy. Boxwoods are either duploids, tetraploids, or triploids. And I don't, I need my notes to tell me which is which. So, yeah, they're all angiosperms, but they don't necessarily flower. And so, but if they do flower, the females come out first. Zone 7, I don't know if you're Zone 7 in Memphis or not. Zone 7 flowering is going to be late March generally. Females first, solitary female flower, and then numerous male flowers right after that, about 5-7 days later. And so that's when they come out. But some do it sporadically, some do it a lot, and some never do it because they're triploids, and so it just depends on the ploidy level if they're going to flower or not. Not all box do flower, even though they are angiosperms. And I can't remember what the ploidy is of the two. I'd have to look at my book.
I would like to follow up on the sample submission. So again, if you are suspecting with any diseases or pests, so you can send it to through the inspectors or extension agents to Nashville or myself. Specifically, I'm in need of Boxwood Blight samples because we are again we haven't. Okay. We have, as I mentioned previously, BBIG team. So all team, we are trying to determine the distribution of which species involved still, even though I mentioned we have only one species right now involved in the United States, but we would like to know if any other new species introduced to United States. That's the reason we are using some genetic tools and molecular assays to be able to confirm the introduction of them and also distribution in the United States of the with the plant materials introduction of the pathogen. That's why, we are in need of samples. If you are suspecting any samples with Boxwood Blight, please feel free to send it to us.
I also just wanted to add that, so if you're a homeowner and you are touring your boxwoods, you're looking around and you come across something that you suspect is Boxwood Blight, if you collect a sample, it would go against all my human nature, because then I would freak out and I would start looking at the rest of my boxwoods going, do I see something else? And I don't do that, because what you're essentially would be doing would be potentially spreading that little bit that you were just handling to all your other boxwoods, because I would be looking, poking around as best I could. So just don't do that if you suspect something. And if you don't feel comfortable collecting the sample, call Leslie, or any one of us would be happy to help you. Collect your sample, put it in a Ziploc bag. Don't put a paper towel or anything in there to keep it moist. Just put it in a Ziploc bag, and you can put it in the refrigerator until you mail it off or contact somebody. But you want to make sure you don't go back into your garden until you've changed your clothes and cleaned your hands and all of that stuff.
And I will say Leslie is confidential when she comes by, so it's...
Yes. I need to say something on that. Yes.
Yeah, I got a question
hello.
about the...
If you actually suspect you have it, I'll be glad to come out and check your property. And I wear boots, and I wear gloves, and I carry a lot of spray, and I try not to touch a lot. If it's a definite, or we're seeing spots and lesions, I'm going to take your sample, and I will FedEx it to Katy in Nashville. And we get a very quick turnaround, whether it is a positive or not. So, yes, feel free. I mean, if you call Chris, he'll get in touch with me. Booker, he'll get in touch with me. And again, you've already heard that it's more than one person looks at these samples. So it is a definitive positive if you get a positive. No fee. No fee for that either. No fee.
They might want to send photos too, because a lot can be discerned from photos because if everybody starts calling you, then you're going to be a very, very busy girl. So
Start with a photo, but I can come take the sample. And yeah, remember, it's no fee. Your tax dollars pay my salary.
yeah, but if you suspect it, I think if you send a photo, there's a lot of things in a photo you'll know right off. A lot of this team here would know right off, hey, that's not it. But then if there's something that's a red flag, then it would warrant a follow-up. Am I speaking out of turn? Okay.
I got a question about, I think it was Lynn's presentation where he showed the brick edging on the boxwood, and then there was another where the edging was cut. Is there any harm to a boxwood if you were going to edge an area with Roundup, if the Roundup would get?
Okay, really good question. So what he was saying was the one shot where I had the trimmed boxwood hedge with the brick right next to it. Then the picture to the right just had the word laser edging. Several points to it. His immediate question was about herbicides. And so, yeah, herbicides can be used in that area. The picture on the right where there was no grass, no anything between the boxwood and the edging. But then I showed you the picture of the herbicide damage too. So drift and particle size, pressure in the sprayer, all those things can make drift or not. And so you need to worry about that. But so close but not too close. And so the thing about edging too is there's a lot of things I didn't have time to say. Virtually everything I said was a lie because I just hit all the high points and there's a lot more details to anything I said. And so just to add one more thing, like with the edging, the picture on the right where he had mechanically edged, to just at that point, that's where you put in like metal edging or brick or slate or something, and that way you're not constantly going back and repruning the roots all the time to maintain that straight edge. The picture on the left was just flat out blatantly too close and not in the best interest of anything. And so you can't do anything there because bare soil equals weeds generally. Weed seeds stay viable for a long time. And so the picture on the left with the boxwood right next to brick edging and the perennials to the left of that is not a problem with having to use herbicide. It's not going to happen. But the picture on the right, yeah. But there wasn't, the way the orientation was, there was never any direct sunlight on that portion. So the amount of weed growth is actually going to be very little. But, and I've seen people use a tobacco hose to pull the weeds out of that area, and guess what that does to boxwood roots? And so, but that's old school, tobacco culture kind of thing, and so you don't want to cultivate it in any manner. There's all kinds of cultivating tools, no mechanical cultivation at all as far as for any reason in that area, and just you can spray, but just watch how close you get. And keep the mulch. If you have a half-inch of mulch, the amount of weeds are going to be very, very minor, really.
I wanted to ask how did this come about at the end of the 20th century into the 21st century? Why now? Why did this come up as a problem? In case we have another couple of hours to talk about this. Why now?
Well, is your question why now blight? Is that your question? Okay, why now coronavirus? And so it's same difference. It's biology, and just it is. Boxwood has had a grand and glorious history with no real problems, and so for how many millennia? And so this is the first real ding, and it's a real sucker punch, 1-2 punch with the decline, with the blight, and with the BTM, the box tree moth, and so nothing's happened before, and so now it's just. I guess it's just its turn. I can just stand here all day and talk about syringa and Lagerstroemia and just any cultivar that's had a list of problems, and Boxwood's been relatively concern free, and that complacency comes in. You plant it, you forget about it. Even a macadam parking lot requires periodic maintenance, and so any living plant's going to require some maintenance too. So it's just remembering those few basic rules that box needs. It likes a high pH, it likes some mulch, it likes a well-drained soil, it likes shade, and just remembering those few basic things. Everything else is easy, but people forget the basic things because it's always been there, it will always be there. I can just forget about it and do nothing to it. Well, that's not the case. Very low maintenance plant, but it's not a no maintenance plant. That's why now.
Anybody else want to tackle that? Bennett, you got any thoughts on that?
On why now for blight? I didn't catch quite all of what Lynn was saying, but I mean, it's just part of why COVID now? Because people are moving around and, flying, traveling all over the world, and just why boxwood tree moth now? people are moving and
Yeah, as we
the
talk,
vectors.
the short distance and long distance movement. So long distance is mainly introduction. So same thing happened with COVID-19 as well, right? It was introduced here via one of the infected person. So same cases. And again, introduction played a big role, specifically in the United States during last 11 years.
Hey, let me add something else to that too. I'm thinking about it. So we're talking about long term, right? Well, think about sanitation. You know, everybody here talked about practicing good sanitation. So if you have the same contractors, you know, that are taking care of your boxwood, then I can see where you can, you know, that cycle will continue.
Hold on, we'll get right back to you. Got one here.
First, I want to thank you. It's been a wonderful presentation. So here's my question. I'm going to go home and I'm going to look at my boxwoods. Oh, you're right. Thank you. Boxwood. And then I'm going to look at my Paxandra. Is that not correct? Oh, she's shaking her head, yes. Okay. So I've got to take pictures of if I see anything and call Leslie. Thank you. Just checking.
I too want to thank y'all. You've been wonderful. I heard clearly transplant in the fall. I've realized looking at these photographs that I do need to thin 6 inches to create more light and air. In our zone, is it okay to do that before March? I know I won't transplant anything, but if I wanted to create more light, is it okay to do that before spring, basically, in this area?
Zone 7, I wouldn't do it before mid-March, and you could do a light, what I call a light thinning, you know, not everything you need, because remember, to thin properly, you want to be able to focus your eyes inside, you want to just, see a little bit of the interior branches, all the interior foliage, and so you don't want to quite thin to that point. It's October when you do the full thinning, so yeah, you can do some now, and then again, follow up in October. And then if you do it in October, then you probably just, like every 2 years, every 3 years, every 4 years, depends on how aggressive you thin it, not in every annual event. And also, not all box needs it. Those that are sheared definitely need it on a regular basis to maintain health of the plant. But a box that's not sheared, no, you're not going to need to, and it could be every 3, 4, 5 years, depending upon a lot of variables.
Okay, while I've got the mic, I might as well get my question out of the way, if you don't mind. I have some boxwoods at the entrance of my home, and I don't want to drive the evil spirits away, but what I've done to them probably will do it. And I need to know what I've done, pruning and shearing. I don't think it fits into either one of those categories, but they're very mature plants. Could I do anything with them now, or should I just pluck them out and start over again?
Well, evil spirits aside, box is a very forgiving plant, and so it takes a lot of neglect, it takes a lot of abuse, and can survive. There's just more variables at play, and it just depends on how far the pendulum has gone and identifying exactly what's wrong, because I've had discussions today where people have a boxwood and they replace it, but they never ask themselves, why did it fail the first time? And so you want to make sure you don't correct that mistake, don't duplicate it. So you need to identify what caused the decline, what caused the death, and then your answer will be maybe you can replant, maybe you can't.
And also, if you want to do a soil test on your boxwood, we do have a soil box out at our office called for the pH. Since it's got a high pH, you might want to do a soil test before you start doing anything else. Make sure you got the right soil pH in there when you start planting your boxwood.
Yeah, one thing I failed to mention too is because of time constraints was if it needs lime, all limes are not created equal. Burnt, dehydrated, agricultural, quick limes, very, very high oxide content, 80%. So you lime today and oxidize off, it's gone 8, 9 months from now. That's not what you want for boxwood. You don't want this capricious up and down with the soil pH. Boxwood is in it for the long, slow haul, stability, consistency. So dolomitic limestone has a low oxide content, about 30%. So it comes on slow, but it buffers the soil pH for 2, 3, 4 years, depending upon the soil type, application rate, and existing soil pH.
It also has magnesium, which is, if you remember anything from biology class, magnesium is at the center of a chlorophyll molecule that everything else hangs around. So it gives you that nutrient that's needed in a smaller amount, as well as the calcium. I'd just like to say one thing, circling back to the pruning. My take on it was always prune before the new growth starts in the spring. That way you don't have to look at the cut stobs all over the winter. In terms of taking off foliage, you're actually reducing the stress on the plant. So I don't understand why the pruning should be done. I understand the transplanting, the roots get established, but I just would like to know your logic on why the pruning would not be acceptable before the new growth starts in the spring.
We talk about pruning, thinning, or shearing?
I'm talking about basically pruning, yes.
Pruning can be done in the winter months in boxwood.
Okay, okay.
Dale knows what boxwoods I have, and I have the New Freedom actually, and Insularis. I have them in a very strong southern exposure. They are pumpkins right now. They are so orange, and I'm concerned. Will I ever get green? I guess I'll get new growth. Will it replace? I mean, they're very orange.
It's like deciduous plants in the fall of the year. People think that the leaves change color. Not true. As the chlorophyll cells most numerous, they die first, exposing carotenoids and flavonoids, so you get the yellow and orange and red.
Okay.
Very same thing with boxwood. So chlorophyll cells are more ephemeral, and so with the sunlight, the chlorophyll cells die, exposing the carotenoids and flavonoids, giving you the yellow-red. And so what happens then, once spring starts coming with the regrowth, the chlorophyll cells regenerate and it becomes green. And so then people think, problem solved. No, it's a wonderful red flag, literally because the boxwood's culturally unhealthy, unhappy about something. And so when all of a sudden when the leaves turn green, think, well, problem solved, just go and have a beer call today. But that's not what's involved, because the problem is still there, it's just not apparent. And so then you have to decide, well, what's causing it? And so, yeah, we know it's sun. I think it's a sunny site, but there could be other things at play there. And so, is the pH right? Is the drainage right? Those are two suspects that usually affect that. Is there mulching? Because it's all about affecting the root growth too. Do you have a vibrant root system? And part of the answer is in there. And I try to talk about the things to keep a healthy root system. Most people fail to think about the root system at all, but that by default will keep a healthier plant. The Korean boxwood, too, are the most cold-hardy boxwood of all. Boxwood as a family is 98% tropical. And so, of course, we being demanding people, we want to deal with the few temperate species. And by the way, we want a really cold-hardy plant that grows in zone 2 for what's basically a tropical plant. And so the Korean boxwood are the most cold-hardy. And so what you have is, yeah, they're cold-hardy, but they're more susceptible to discoloring, but they will green up, but they shouldn't discolor as much as you're describing it.
They have a very strong southern exposure. I'm anticipating I'm going to have to plant a small tree of some sort on the west side of that to help shape it a little bit.
There's all kinds of trees. If you want to leave the box, the question was, what does she do long term? And so, a tree with dappled sun, there's all kinds of wonderful deciduous trees. Well, not deciduous, that give you the high canopy, which is going to help a lot. Yeah, and that's part of a whole comprehensive landscape design too. And so you have to think about the whole landscape design, not just the boxwood or begonias or the something else, but how is it all unified? And I think some of the other speakers mentioned that too. So it's a lot of things all combined. It's never one element.
Yeah, I know these were planted too late in the season, and so they do not have sort of the established roots either. And just anecdotal experience, if you plant in the springtime and a lot of times you'll get more bronzing, boxwood bronzing, the first years that it's in. And then once it's established, you'll get less of that. But there is an issue with a lot of sun, especially when the sun's low on the horizon in the winter months.
Yeah, I didn't appreciate their recently transplanted boxwood. Generally, it takes 3 years, for a plant to become established in a new site, unless it's a large site. But 3 years is the accepted rule of thumb.
Anybody else on the panel have any thoughts on?
Did you say the cultivar was Nana, Insularis Nana?
Insularis cultivarnina.
And she also has your new gen Freedom.
Well, with the Nana in particular, it's cultivar. We've always recommend shade, yeah. And so I would say yes to the tree on the southwest side. I think it would help it. And the Freedom is also, that's a nature of the beast. It gets that bronze color in the late winter, but it usually pops out of it pretty quick. You know, if you do a little bit of pruning and particularly if it's the first year, if you want to give it a little bit of fertilizer.
Yes. What would be the preferred fertilizer to give in the fall, and what would the NPK possibly be?
It's real easy for me to convince anybody to spend $100 on fertilizer. I'll give each of you a $10 bill to go get a $10 soil test to determine if you need fertilizer, what kind of fertilizer, and how much. That's the only way you can determine if you need fertilizers, by having a soil test. You have to know what's there first. If anyone's going to say breaking up a bag of 10-6-4, 50% organic and apply 1 pound per thousand the fall of the year, poppycock, because you don't know what's there and it's not going to work. And so, you know, boxwood does not need fertilizer generally. The garden is very dynamic, and so something's going on, but you look at all the wild box and they've never needed fertilizer. Commercial landscapes, residential landscapes are more demanding, and so maybe you need to push the growth. But again, just, you know, a fertilizer has, and quite often, frankly, it's not that it's nutrient deficient or sometimes has excessive nutrients. The pH is wrong. And just by correcting the soil pH, you're going to do far more good than applying nutrients that aren't available to the plant because the pH is wrong, they're not available.
And the soil box cost $15 per box at our office. We had the soil box. It cost $15 per box.
I'll be out there. I'll be out Monday.
Some of the speakers have mentioned maybe not having such a high concentration of box in one area, but diversifying a little bit. And I think Mr. Saunders mentioned holly as an alternative, at least. Did I understand that correctly? And I was going to ask, if you do want to reduce the concentration of box in a certain area, what are the best substitutes to give you a box look, but be compatible with the box?
Well, you know, in my own garden, we mix like a lot of boxwood and hydrangeas, for instance. I mean, completely different plants. But if you're trying to get the boxwood look, I don't know, I may have to defer to somebody else, because we have tried some boxwood lookalikes, and I know we're selling a few, our nursery's selling a few, but we get 10 calls for boxwood for every 1 call we get for a boxwood lookalike. So
I would refer to your Dutch friend.
yeah.
But there are no substitutes, right? No substitutes for boxwood?
That's right. Oh, yeah.
I think I'm loud enough. I thank all the speakers for coming out today and did a great job. My question is, we talked about pests just in our boxwood. Is there a beneficial pest that could be introduced in our landscape to help combat that? Like ladybugs? I don't know.
For what particular insect are you talking about?
You guys, I think I discussed a couple of insects that can be detrimental to our boxwood. Is there something, there's a beneficial insect that, you know, that's in the landscape that take care of that?
I think Lynn showed a picture of a bird.
I talked about mites, predatory mites, and they're worth their weight in gold. I mean, don't walk, run, and buy predatory mites. It's the best thing since sliced bread. I can't say enough about them. And so if your boxwood has mites, but to my knowledge, there's no other predatory insects for any of the pests that I showed other than predatory mites for boxwood mite.
Okay, so ladybugs out the question, because I got a house full of them.
Mites are good.
Predatory mites.
I hadn't heard any mention about horticultural or dormant oil, like to combat the spores, to combat the blight. Is that something you recommend or that would work?
For pests, yes, it will. For blight, no, we have not tested the dormant oil for Boxwood Blight management yet. So in the meantime, it's in the review stage right now. I mentioned previously, so we will have outlined pest and disease, Boxwood pest and disease management timeline will be published through Tennessee State University soon. So definitely I will be informing you. So you will have every month what to look for and what to treat with, so, and for insects and also for diseases.
We've noticed a pest that wasn't even mentioned today on Boxwood that's given us a fit. It's called Japanese maple scale. And I saw, I was interested, and I don't think any of the other speakers mentioned it, but, and it's a pest that has just come into, we noticed damage back in 2018, and it's gotten worse every year. But it's definitely something to keep on the lookout for. Particularly, it seems to be bad on the upright plants, fastigiata and derunk. Yeah. And anyway, so oil is one of the ways that we're controlling that. We're going to try to get that up. If you're having issues with derunk or fastigiata, we're going to try to get some of that on our website here in the next couple of months to explain. And we're going to discuss that at the Boxwood boot camp too, by the way, because it's a new pest for us, it is.
Yeah, so I've actually seen Indian wax scale. So, of course, you can use your dormant oils for that as well, and your horticultural oils. But something like the Indian wax scale is big enough, just pluck it off. Right.
Yeah, we see what I call it a Florida wax scale, maybe the same thing. Is it the one with the orange in the center? It has the,
yes, yeah.
Soft scale?
Right, soft scale. Right.
Yeah, I thought that was Florida wax scale is what I was calling it, but you probably know better than I.
I've seen it a couple of times.
Okay.
If you have any question about blight and soil testing, you can call our office at 901-752-1207, and we'd be glad to help you out there.
I'll just say about the question about the dormant oil. We use dormant oil here at the Dixon because we don't like to spray a lot of chemicals, and it'll actually smother out mite eggs and scale, and we do it as a preventative measure in the winter because it's just paraffin oil, and you have to watch the temperatures, but we do it on all our boxwood, azaleas, and camellias to get lacebug, scale, mites, all of that, and we definitely see it help, and also it gives you a nice glossy look to your plants, so it's good.
The problem with mites is they overwinter as an egg on the underside of the leaf, and so the very, very dense hydrophobic leaves, so you're going to get 2% of all the mites if you're lucky with the suppression of dormant oil, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, we use a high-pressure sprayer, and I tell the guys to go underneath the leaves, and you're probably right. We do 2 applications, and we don't get all of them, but we're definitely taking out some.
And shoot for the other side. So you actually, when you spray one side, you're shooting to the other side and go around. So that way helps too. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a brand?
There are a lot of horticultural oils out there. I will say, read the labels because they're very temperature sensitive. If it's too hot, you can't spray them. If it's too cold, you can't spray them. Do you have any thoughts on that, brands?
Yeah, so when you're using horticultural dormant oil, make sure you read and follow the label. Temperatures above 40 degrees. So above 40, less than 80 is what you're going to be looking for.
It's a really good question.
So I have a question for Fulya, maybe.
All right.
So I had, Chuan Hong was doing some work on spreader stickers or Vaporguard.
I was about to tell
and
that.
it looked really good, the preliminary data, but I have not seen any since. So
Yeah, there's no publication. We are in the research stage still, and Bennett is in our advisory board, and he's listening our discoveries and results. Yes, BBIG group, specifically Dr. Chuan Hong, Marjorie Daughtry, and Jim Lamondia. They are screening some of the products. Hopefully soon, maybe end of this year, we may have some results to share, but it is in the experimental stage yet. So I just wanted to point out. And they are also screening some of the biocontrol agents, some of the bacteria, beneficial bacteria against Boxwood blight, and they have really promising results from those beneficial biocontrol agents as well. Hopefully, again, as a result of this teaming together and developing the BBIG team, so we will have really good results to share with the all Boxwood community and stakeholders.
So to me, this is a really big deal because, you heard me talk about spraying. We don't like spraying because we got to keep our workers out for so many hours or days. And when you spray a garden, I know, Dale, you don't want to spray because you got to keep people out. But these materials like Vaporguard, you can spray it and I think you can go immediately in. It's just like an oil spray and there's no toxicity whatsoever. And to me, it would be a huge stride forward as far as chemical control. And he's also looking at combining Vaporguard with the fungicide and to extend the life of the fungicide. So there's many ways that could be a huge breakthrough with blight if it works. But just stay tuned.
Yes, stay tuned. Hopefully, again, end of this year, we will be sharing some of our research results. So, again, all team, they are working on it.
One of the things that I took home from your presentation, or something that really resonated with me, is that the infection site is through the stomates in the leaves. And so I guess is that what you're saying, is this Vaporguard would affect the stomata and keep you,
Exactly. They say it's on the bottom, so the stomates are on the bottom only, is that right?
Correct.
So they just coat the bottom of the leaf, and that's where the Boxwood blight enters into the leaf.
Mycelium or infection doesn't develop, so...
But preliminary research showed it lasting like way better than a fungicide, believe it or not. I mean, and so it really will raise your eyebrows when you hopefully
hopefully
it'll work.
We will have some promising results to be able to save the Boxwood for our nation. So.
Yeah, that kind of ties into Lynn's point that the waxy cuticle is really dense and hard to penetrate, that on the leaf. So I guess I didn't know that the stomates were the point of entry.
My team also had done so much study on the rotation program for example, for the Boxwood blight management, different fungicides with the frag coats application in different intervals. I will be happy to share those results and publications via, again, your website. So. Again, we are working, so definitely we have some promising results, combining, for example, the biocontrol agents or fungicides together. And time to time, we have also some of the products, some of the sanitation products, disinfectants, which they are labeled also on the foliage usage, such as Clean Grove. So we had done so much studies in combination or in a rotation plan, and they have really promising results for Boxwood blight management.
All right, I got a number of questions. My wife tells me the customer is always right. And I've got an architect that wanted a whole lot of boxwoods in full southern exposure. And it's constantly a problem. So if I take soil samples, how many soil samples would I take in a half-acre lot? And when I take the soil samples, if I don't want to damage the roots of the boxwood, how close to the boxwood do I take a soil sample? That's one question. I've got a number of them.
If this table were your boxwood hedge, and so what you do is you take the samples vertical to the hedge, not this way. So shovel goes in this way, and you can get quite close to the drip line, and you're going to wound and kill some roots, but not much if the shovel went this way. The trick is to go down 6 inches, take the shovel out, go back inch and a half, put the shovel in again 6 inches. That's the wedge you take out. Make sure there's no grass or mulch on that top section. For a half-acre lot, you want, unless there's any weird things going on in the lot, 6 or 8 samples ought to work. And just put on some newspaper, let it dry, pound it with a hammer, mix it up, and just put in the amount you need for the soil test.
and mix all those tests
Yes, into
together?
one, yes.
One test
Yes,
altogether?
yes.
So one side of the yard wouldn't be fine pH and the other side would be pH off? Because some of the boxwoods have...
Yeah, I didn't talk about hydrology, and I'd love to talk for a week on that, but yeah, there's so much movement in the soil vertically and horizontally, and so it's not going to make any difference at all because there's a lot of lateral movement in the soil too because of hydrology, and so it's not going to vary from like the corner of this room to the corner of that room even more. It's not going to vary because there's so much lateral movement. It can't happen.
Cool. Okay, the next thing is I go from yard to yard taking care of folks' places. So what do I clean my tool with specifically? I saw Clorox and Lysol, which would be relatively easy to apply to tools. Is that what you're recommending?
Yes, definitely. I had the list of the products, including ethanol. So you may choose one of the disinfectant, including Lysol. Lysol is easy if you have the sprayer bottle. So you can, for homeowners specifically, you can just spray on your pruner. Definitely one of the disinfectant needed. Between the landscapes, definitely the tools, equipment, whatever you are using needs to be, again, cleaned up from the older soil residues, plant debris, and everything, then sanitized with using some of the disinfectants.
Okay. The other thing is going from property to property. What I saw, Mr. Saunders, is that you're cleaning people's boots, but are you concerned about my clothes? Because you said sticky spores. I'm thinking these clothes that I'm wearing, do I need to wear...
Yeah, we have the guys spray with alcohol between fields. And so we have a squirt bottle full of alcohol, 70% isopropyl.
On fabric clothing?
Yes, that's what we're using. So I would think that if you sprayed enough on it, that it would kill the spores.
It will be, yes, definitely. My recommendation, if you have suspected areas I'm not talking about the nurseries right now, so for the landscape design, if you have, for example, suspected landscape, leave it at the end of the day to visit. Otherwise, you will be risking every landscape you are visiting.
Yeah, right.
So leave that area for the end of the day. Then if you are going with your clothes, definitely it needs to go through the laundry, needs to be washed off. One other recommendation, if you will be visiting or you entered and suspecting it, so try to have it. I know TDA inspectors, they are carrying the coveralls and booties. Yeah. Those are really handy. So, and again, this is a business you want to protect, right?
Absolutely.
That's the reason I will highly recommend purchasing those type of coveralls and booties and having in your truck. And even again, even though there is no risk, between the, again, visits, change the coverall and put into the double bag and then just burn it out. So, again, nobody wants to lose the business, even for landscaper or nursery growers. Nursery growers, I know we have the quarantine applied since 2018, but I know in Virginia too, they are trying to restrict the visits of other people into their nursery plots. So some measures needs to be taken. And as well as, for example, I show pictures for the landscapers and nurseries. You can place some foot beds or tire beds to, for example, moving one, again, tractor from another area. Those foot beds and the tractor tire beds, they will help to clean the again, tires between the locations. So I'm even suggesting some of the nursery growers put a sign and also locked maybe entry to eliminate the entries on, again, expected people to visit your facility. whatever, again, this is your business and you would like to protect your business and make your decision on what's right for your business.
Okay, a couple other things. If I find this waxy scale on boxwoods, does that generally mean that the boxwood is stressed in some other way?
I'm sorry, I don't hear very good.
If I see this waxy scale, if I open
Yeah.
up my boxwood and I see this
Yeah.
waxy scale on the boxwood, my mind says it's stressed in some other way, that's why it has this scale.
Yes.
If it's a healthy plant, it generally wouldn't have that waxy scale.
Mites, we were talking about that during lunch. Scale generally does not come in as a primary causal agent. It's usually a secondary or tertiary thing. So, so the scale is one thing, but that's not the end of the problem. So what causes scale? What cultural need isn't being satisfied that's stressing the plant? And that's what you need to correct to avoid reoccurrent scale.
Well, that's why I'm thinking soil samples, but it might be that it's just in a place that's a flat table and it's wet.
It could be environmental, it could be site conditions, it could be abiotic, it can be a long list of things.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right, and I'll tell you what I was saying too with the wax scale. Yeah, so this box was actually in a situation with just full sun. So it was stressed out, and then I found out too that the pH was off. So of course, if the plant is stressed, then here comes the pest.
Okay.
So I would like to add one more detail, not only for the pests and insects, and also for diseases. If you remember, we discussed about Volotella, Macrophoma. So those are generally appears on the stressed plants. So it means not only for the pests. So be careful and try to identify what's causing the stress on the plants. So it could be root rot pathogen involving. It could be Phytophthora impacting the root system. Then your plants become more susceptible to other, for example, secondary pathogens or the pests, including mites, scales, and Volotella blight, and Macrophoma blight. Again, the main thing you need to question to yourself, what's the reason of this stress on the plant, and how am I going to help the plant to get rid of that stress factor? Some of them, it is not easy if it is environmental factors and other things, so it's not easy. But if it is related with your cultural practices, you need to revisit those, again, errors and mistakes happen, and don't repeat it again for the new plantation.
Well, that's my issue, is I've got boxwoods that have been there for years, and maybe the water table changed in some way. Maybe something was added. What can I do about it? Or it's in the sun. What can I do about it? I just got to deal with cultivation issues.
If it's a change in the site condition, these things take 5, 10, 15, 20 years to manifest themselves. So it's a slow conspiracy to affect your plant. And so you just have to identify what it is. And shade, overhead shade, we talked about shade trees, different kinds of things to provide some shade.
Water is, I find, here's the issue.
If water is the issue,
It's not like it's sitting in water, it's just...
Well, see, again, boxwood is very sensitive to salt, which I didn't talk about, but it's also very sensitive to water because, again, boxwood roots have a high soil area requirement, which is why naturally they grow in calcareous soils, they grow in rocky soils, they grow on slopes, that kind of thing, and all those conditions are well drained. It has a high soil area requirement. So even, like a sandy loam, a loamy clay soil is going to be way too hard, dense for it to grow boxwood. Right. And loamy soils itself even depends. Loamy silt, maybe not, but loamy sand, sure, that's going to work. And so it's all subtle degrees, and let alone there's, I think, 17 families of soil. And so, it's just a lot of things just in the soil, but that could be part of it. And so what you have there is just the standard answer is French drains, or I like the notion of elevation, but that if you have existing plants, that's hard to do. So redirect, if you can find out where it's coming from and just redirect at some point off-site if that's impossible. That's the best solution, because French drains and swales, we have the box there, that's not going to work. And so it's deflection further up if that's possible.
Okay, just to follow up with your mite packet that you hang on the spider, for the, not spider mites, but mites, how You said what, 6 feet apart?
Okay, the question was about predatory mites and how to deploy them. So again, there's a lot of things I didn't say about it. And so mites, in a really hot, dry summer, you can have 7, 8 generations 1 year. The growth is incredibly exponential. You go from 100 mites to 10,000 mites to 100 billion mites and a couple, anyway, this goes exponentially like that with each generation, 7, 8 generations. So you want to deploy the mites at the end of the first generation where there's enough food for the predatory mice to eat, but before the second generation comes in. And for zone 7, that's generally mid-late May for you guys, and that's when you want to deploy them. A little bit earlier, a little bit later, it's not going to hurt anything because they're voracious eaters. They're great. And so, but you don't want to apply it too early because they don't have the food. They don't have the boxwood mice to eat. They starve. And so then if you apply it too late, well then they'll eat all they can eat. But by the time you're in 3rd generation, they're overwhelmed and you can't control it. So timing is important. Many sources for the predatory mice. They're all good. Ambios is the species, and it's when the box comes, you have to make sure it'll always be express mail. They have to be put out the next day. Whether it's raining, whether you have a vacation, doesn't matter. So make sure they arrive the next day and put them out. It depends on the boxwood. Single specimens, if you have a 6x6 boxwood that's 10 feet apart, one is on each plant, and they'll find everything. If you have a hedgerow that's 18 inches tall and as long as this room, well, you would put one about every 6 foot just inside the boxwood somewhere, and then they will crawl out and they will find the box mice. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, you're going size and whatnot. So yeah, I'm trying to calculate size and quantity of that.
Yeah, most websites, almost all the good suppliers will talk about that too. And please follow directions. More is not better. And so if they say, put them every 6 feet, well, don't say, well, I'm going to be twice good and apply them every 3 inches because they'll starve. They won't have enough food source. So you can do too much. So just, follow the instructions as far as deployment and timing. But, you want to be about mid-May for the boxwood mite. Mid-late May.
And just one more, and that's it. Japanese maple scale, does Safari take care of that?
We're just now digging into that. We're putting together a plan right now, and we think it has 2 primary generations. In the 2nd generation, we can use a neonic, which Safari is, I believe. We're wondering if we won't get some control on our boxwood leaf miner sprays because Safari is one of the products that we're using. But there's another product, I don't have my notes in front of me, maybe, I don't know what it was, but there was another product that was recommended that we use on our early sprays, and I'm not sure the availability of that either, whether it's just for commercial applicators or whether it's available to over the counter. So we're going to work on that, by the way, on our website. But you said white scale, right?
No.
Did somebody say something?
But Japanese maple scale.
Yeah, this time. But didn't you say something else about a white?
Waxy scale.
Okay.
I thought so.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Florida, from Florida or West Virginia, I don't know where it's from.
Yes. The neonics will control the Japanese maple scales. Just read and follow the label.
So we have pronounced some of the product names, and again, we highly recommend you, before using those products, please visit their label and instructions to make sure if it is again labeled on that crop or for here, for our state. So please make sure you are reading the labels.
Can we, I'll get you next. You got somebody back here that has the mic. I'll bring the mic over to you, Barbara. You're next.
I was really interested to hear you talk about Vaporguard. I've been using it for a couple of years now, and my boxwoods look way better. I mean, in the worst winter we ever had, which was last winter, I didn't have any damage. No, nothing. No yellowing, no red leaves, nothing. So I wanted to know if you all could expound a little bit on Vaporguard and tell me a little bit more about it. I learned about it from a landscape architect in Michigan.
30, 40 years ago, we were spraying Vaporguard on our peaches because it supposedly made them larger because they wouldn't lose water. And I know of some growers that are using Vaporguard before they dig boxwood, particularly in the summertime because they get the flagging of the new growth. But I don't know. Other than that, it's experimental work right now, so we certainly can't recommend it. But
yeah, it's in the experimental stage. Thank you very much for sharing your observations with us. That's wonderful to hear. Actually, looks like we are in the good track. So definitely, again, it has been tested last year, and this year we will have the repeat of the trials, and they will again the team will be BBIG will be publishing those results soon. Please stay tuned. So we will have the results to be shared.
Will the homeowner be able to purchase over-the-counter chemicals that will be as effective as what the people they would hire who are licensed to handle chemicals? Will that be as effective result for the homeowner?
Would you like to take the question?
are you speaking of Boxwood Blight?
No, I'm thinking of leaf miner and fertilomes, imidacloride that's a drench, for leaf miner.
Yeah, so what the commercial guys use is going to be restricted use, so the homeowner's not going to be able to buy that product. So some of the products that we did name today, and we know that some of those products do work, which is going to be the bio-advanced, the active ingredients in imidacloprid, we know that works, dinotefuran, we know that works too for the leaf miners. But yeah, it's going to be, the homeowner's not going to be able to get what the commercial guys are using.
I know they can't, but will what they can buy be effective?
The bio-advanced imidacloprid, I've been having to recommend that for several years for crepe myrtle bark scale. All right, it is a systemic, so there are several things. Yes, you need to read label to see what exactly it treats on what plants. The hard part for a homeowner, reading the label and mixing it appropriately, because most folks want to add a little extra. So, imidacloprid is very effective. As far as dinotefuran, the Safari, that's not a normal, you're not going to go to Home Depot and buy that. That's not something I'd recommend your homeowner to go buy. It's very expensive for a bottle of it, even though it's a very small amount that's used. But yes, if you do your homework, you could possibly do some treatment with imidacloprid.
Yeah, I just think that that's an important thing, because exclusion is what we're trying, I think most of us feel like the best defense is to keep it from ever coming on our property. And if you've got other people spraying it that are professionals, so if you do it yourself, you're not having hoses that have been drug over other boxwoods coming to your house. So that, I think is that why you're asking?
Well, that and just its effectiveness. If you use the imidacloprid drench that comes with fertilizer, and you put that on your box, and you put it on your boxwood, is it going to kill a leaf miner?
Depends on what's on the label. You've got to read the label to see how it states it.
There's something that you can do, that commercial applicator and private applicator. Now, we do private applicator license that's just for a homeowner. Somebody got a greenhouse and they don't have a greenhouse, they want to spray their own self. They can come out there and watch a video and get a private applicator license. That you got a greenhouse, you just spray. You can't spray nobody else's property, just don't spray around what you have. That's a private application you can get licensed that you can receive.
Oh, we got somebody here.
I appreciate you coming. I've learned a lot. I have been treating my boxwood, which are almost 44 years old, the ones that I have in my front yard. And I've been using the newest Mid-South Garden Guide. And in there it says to trim them in February. So that's what I've been doing for several years. It also says to mix up what the Dixon uses as fertilizer, which I've always also been doing. My question is, am I doing my boxwood a disservice by what I thought I was doing right?
Yes. The conspiracy begins because those things don't immediately make the boxwood look bad, and so there's no knee-jerk reaction. There's a slow decline, from that, because the pruning in February is going to cause sun scald, frost injury, the cambium separation. Fertilizing was not necessary as a buildup of salts, so you have the salt concentration in the soil. It's also over-fertilization encourages the internode length being too long, making its cells further apart, which encourages more insects and diseases. All this happens very slow because, again, the specific gravity is so hard. It's a very, very good plant. So it can withstand neglect, it can withstand abuse. It's a question of when it becomes too much. So it doesn't sound like too much, but you're not helping the box by doing that. Yeah. So the things you heard today from all of us, I would cite on what we're saying and not the practices you've been doing. And so it's true, it sounds paradox, but I've seen people kill box with true love. I mean, people get passionate about box. They want to do the right thing, and it's a very paternal thing, but I've seen a lot of boxwood die from good intentions.
I think it might be good to clarify pruning, opening up holes, thinning, shearing. I mean, those are different times of the year because I just can't see how pruning in February or March would be detrimental to boxwood. I mean, we cut holes in our boxwood and take them down a little bit. Don't do hard prunes, but we do that in February and March before the new growth appears. Otherwise, if we do it in the fall, we're looking at cut stems into the winter months, and it seems like when you open that up, you are susceptible to frost and other things getting in there, like you were talking about.
I don't know if I can remember everything you said, but the one that hit is pruning in February, and so the bud leaf scales and flower buds are already starting to form, and so you're cutting that wood where the leaf buds are beginning to form. They're still pubescent, but that's where they start to form. So you're delaying new foliage growth by 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks, and so that sets everything back. And so the leaves want to maximize sunlight production, and so if you're pruning then and you're delaying that new growth by that period of time, that's not being in a good for plant. So again, you don't see the decline, you don't see the stress because it's incremental, but it's not the optimum time to do it. That's why you want to do it in fall, because you're not going to have new growth, and the plant's going to sleep is beginning root growth. And so as the sugars change around in response to the increasing day length, increasing temperatures, it's beginning to grow leaf buds. And if you prune in February, you're going to prune those off. It has to grow new ones, and there's a delay in there in that. And what other times were you?
They flush out great, and they do fabulous when we prune. In fact, yeah.
That's the wonderful thing about the whole thing. So okay.
Growth follows the cut. Growth follows the cut, right?
We have a boxwood, 100 roots, 100 leaves. Everything's really good. And so you prune off 10 of the leaves. And then along comes spring. And so there's a stress response because, number one, the plant has 100 roots. It wants to have the 100 leaves. It now has 90. It wants to recapture those 10. By the way, spring's coming, so it wants to grow 10 more. So it's actually going to grow 20 leaves. So that's why a big flush of growth. So what looks like a good thing for the plant is actually a complete stress response, and it's not in the best interest. So boxwood does things slowly. It's not like a marigold, petunia, lots of other plants where a flush of growth is fully appropriate and all that. We're talking about the physiology is completely different. And for boxwood, you can't and should not expect a stress response like that. When you get a big flush of growth, that's because there's problems. And so by pruning in February, it's trying to regain those 10 leaves plus grow 10 more. And that's why you have so much, that big flush. It's trying to get back to where it was, creating stress.
Well, I mean, I understand if you have more shoots than you have roots, you're going to have a real issue. But the plant growth is compensating to keep that balance between shoots and roots. And as horticulturalists and nurserymen, nurseries are constantly using the adage, growth follows the cut, to make the plant look presentable.
Well, production and residential landscape are two different things. Production is a whole different thing, and I'd probably defer to Bennett on that. But production, it's all about growth. If I can grow a boxwood in 5 years and someone else can grow it in 4 years, they're going to make a lot more money than me. So it's all about maximizing growth. And so a lot of growth regulators, a lot of fertilizer, water injection, a lot of different compounds being used, different soils, all about maximization of growth, because it's, time is money. And so that's one of the fundamental principles there. It changes then when it goes in the landscape. It's no longer about production, it's about establishment and maintenance of a plant that ought to live for centuries. Production, you deal with a plant for 4 or 5, maybe 10 years. I don't think they deal with it much longer than that, but here's a plant that lives for 3 or 4 centuries. And so it's not about maximizing growth, it's maintaining growth and maintaining a healthy plant. So the strategy becomes very different. So that's why in my one book I'm making a whole separate chapter on commercial production as opposed to landscape maintenance. They're very, very different considerations. They should never be confused.
Well, we certainly don't shear our boxwood. We don't shear them, but the adage for most people, it's like, is it the right time to prune an azalea? Well, if you prune an azalea at the wrong time, is all you're going to be doing is cutting off the flowers. And in my estimation, pruning, but you're saying what we're pruning is at the wrong time, but we are creating pockets and air circulation, and we're increasing that. So the adage, prune when your shears are sharp, is kind of, because you're busy, you're in the garden. We've got a lot of boxwood around here. We're trying to do other things, plant 250,000 tulips. So we try to put things on the schedule where they fit. And I guess I'm a little shocked that I'm abusing my boxwood here, and because I love them.
Yeah,
okay.
Well, you're talking about pruning and thinning at the same time, and so thinning is in the fall, and creating pockets for the air and light circulation. That's always a fall thing. That's October, and so and that's the problem too, because again, boxwood is a very slow, patient plant, and so again, the response is very, very slow, and so the cause effect is difficult to achieve, and so it becomes a vehicle of convenience. It's convenient for me to do this now, because in public gardens, I spent my whole career in public gardens. It's a lot to manage, and so it becomes a question like, what do I have the time to do right now? Boxwood's easy, so I'll defer, or I'll do it right now, without regards to is it the best interest of the plant, because boxwood is stoic and it's wonderful, it's always going to be there, but it's all incremental and all adds up, and then it becomes exponential, and that's where you start getting the problems.
Well, I think I would like to, as a result of this, I would like to, I guess my time's up. No, as a result of this, I would like to come up with some best management practices, but I think maybe I need to even look deeper and look at cultural timing for Shelby County and maybe circulate that to some of you. Would you be interested in looking at that and giving me your comments if we were to put together such a document here at Dixon? Yep. Bennett, would you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I might just add, we do all of our pruning we had a bunch of guys hit the ground here recently, and we prune wide open until like the 1st of April. This is our pruning time. But
yes,
I will say too, though, that it depends on the plant a little bit.
But the settings is completely different. Let's make the separation.
No, but we prune our landscapes too. I mean, we prune everything.
Can I recommend one thing?
I think this is how you get to.
Dale, we've got a lot of questions. Maybe we could. We've got a lot of people asking who want to ask questions.
I will recommend one thing for Dale, maybe. If you can set up one experimental site here in Dixon to make comparison between, again, the different timing of the prunings for the demonstration reason, I think that could be better approach instead of...
Great idea.
Yes.
Idea.
Good.
All right.
All right, next question.
I want to ask, if I understand correctly, it's the spores that are spreading it. And if you have taken a boxwood out and it's infected, and then you come back, should you not till it? Are you tilling it down further in the ground? Is that why you're waiting the 5 years? And is there nothing you can put in there that will kill those spores that before you replant? What is the guidelines for replanting those areas that have to be cleaned? And then what should not be cleaning? I know you mentioned Sarcocoa and Pachysandra. And aside from that, is there anything else that should not go back where the boxwood had been?
So if I follow up the question, so the question, if there's a confirmation of Boxwood blight in the plant, so how long it needs to take for the replantation? Am I correct on the Okay, that's my understanding. So again, when I explained the biology of the pathogen, so the mycelium can survive up to 5 years. That's what we know for now. And microsclerotia, like around maybe 10 weeks. So my recommendation, again, don't plant the clear host, what we know, Pachysandra and Sarcococca. And when you are cleaning up the plants, again, we had a couple pictures, so again, cover with the plastics to not to fall the leaves, defoliated leaves, it will be on the ground. So try to flame the area first. And I had the instructions for 1 meter, for example, for 40 seconds. So then you need to vacuum the area from defoliated leaves. So sanitation is really, really important before going there and planting another boxwood, which we have right now, a couple tolerant plants like New Gene. So if I were you, probably I wasn't planting boxwood again into the same location at least for 5 to 6 years. Then maybe you can come back with the tolerant cultivars and plant it into the same location. Is that answer your question?
But you can't kill the spores
with the flaming, yes. Whatever is on the surface, yes, you will be.
The ones that are unseen.
But if there is any decomposition happens, yes, you will have still survival, again, pathogen structures inside the soil. And again, my presentation will be available and you can find the details from there. But again, I'm going back, if decomposition happened and the defoliated leaves already incorporated into the soil when you are digging the plants, so you will have some risk again for future. And my recommendation for next 5 to 6 years, don't think about maybe placing boxwood other than maybe tolerant boxwood available in the market.
Is Boxwood Blight the only disease we have to worry about the disposal, the burn, bag, bury? For boxwoods, like boxwood dieback, anything else, do we have to be as concerned about the disposal?
Since we have the quarantine implementation, yes, Boxwood blight is a big concern. But in general, if you notice, best management practices covers all the disease-related issues. So even again for volatile blight, so why are we seeing volatile blight, or why do we have the Phytophthora? Again, those are present already there. Just they are looking for the condition available for them to again show up. My recommendation, follow the best management practices, and yes, Boxwood blight is big concern, but other issues also comes together with the other tied with the other issues.
Thank you.
This is for Bennett. Your story about planning at the White House was so interesting, but I was just curious why August. Is there and if August wasn't ideal for you, is there a good time?
Yeah, that's for the president.
I thought we weren't supposed to talk about politics here. Because that's when they wanted it. There's no other answer to that, but because that's when they wanted it. Lynn made a very good point. Fall is the best time to transplant boxwood, through and through, no question. From about Labor Day up until Thanksgiving in Zone 7 is by far the best time to transplant boxwood, particularly large boxwood.
I worked at the White House for many years as a consultant, and it's all at the pleasure of the president. And so it's about that, and that's the most convenient time. The president, regardless of who the president is, usually goes away in August and does things, and that's fine. And that's generally when the garden staff really does incredible work, and this was an extreme example of that. It's at the pleasure of the president.
Question. I was here in 2006 when you came for the Boxwood Society, and you were good enough to endorse the book. I'd like to have the rest of the panel do that as well for today's occurrence.
Yeah,
I was wondering how many of those folks.
Yeah, I think the battery's dying on that one.
I think the battery's going out.
Okay, here it is. I was wondering how many Boxwood Society folks are actually here today from the Memphis area. I know we've lost about half of the audience and that type of thing, but if there's anybody here, I'd be interested in giving your response or Bennett's comment that the society wasn't having some difficulties. Those kind of questions.
In general, I think many societies, not just plant societies, are having problems because of just the internet and that kind of thing. And so in my experience in several different fields other than plants, I've seen some societies thrive, but most are stable or contracting. In general, I don't even know, 15, 20 different plant societies on the board of most of them. And so a lot of them are contracting, just there's less interest in that, And so, the American Boxwood Society I'm an honorary life member of the American Boxwood Society. I'm an honorary life member of the English Boxwood Society. I'm an honorary life member of the French Society. I could go on. And so I know all of them, and they're doing well in Europe. They really are. Your question is about the ABS, and the ABS, I've been a member for almost 50 years, believe it or not, and it's had its ups and downs, and it's doing just fine. What's going on right now is this, I'm writing the 5th edition of my Boxwood Handbook. I'm writing my 2nd edition of my Boxwood Encyclopedia, which
that was another question I had.
And so, it's a lot for the society to manage, and we're trying to figure out how to do that right now. But it's a viable, good organization. And the best thing in plant societies is it's honest information. They're not trying to sell a service or a product when a day's done. It's all about this honest information. And societies, whether it's the Boxwood Society, the Begonia Society, the Hemmer-Carl Society, that's all they're trying to do. And so, and I think the Boxwood Society does a very good job with that. There's actually several chapters. Missouri Botanic Garden has a very strong chapter of the American Boxwood Society. There's one in Buzzards Bay, and so there's a bunch of them. So there's actually satellite organizations too. And so I think it's fine, my perspective.
When can we expect the 2nd edition?
When can you expect the 2nd edition? It took me 18 months to write the checklist, which is going to be used for that, a 44-page list describing all the different cultivars and species, invalid synonyms, and so on. And so in doing the 2nd edition, I first have to do the nomenclature. What is the name? And then it's going to take me, I've been working on that for 2 years, and so I have a 3.5-week European expedition where I'm going to Poland, Germany, France, Belgium, the UK, which includes Wales, to go to some arboreta I haven't been to before, because that book came out in 2004, and there's been a lot of new box cultivars since then. And so I haven't got up close and personal with them, and I want to do that when I write this. And so it's waiting for COVID. All my contacts have been made. I have all the support I need, but I'm scared I won't be able to get from one country to another because all the regulations are constantly changing. So I'm waiting for it to be, the regulatory aspects of COVID to be off the table so I can just go unfeathered from country to country. It's a rather ambitious expedition, but I do that for the book. And so, because I have to see them, I can't just write about them. I have to see them, touch them, and measure them, and do that. And so the handbook is a little bit easier. but I'm actually waiting for the BBIG to finish because the work they're doing is absolutely incredible, funded by the USDA, and we're just begun year 2 of a 4-year program. It's really exciting work, and to publish my handbook before that study is finished is premature, and so I'm waiting for that. I'm doing some other things too. Neither one's going to be a new edition. They're actually a substantial rewrite. They're going to be profoundly different editions, the 2 books.
I have a question for Saunders brothers. When is the evaluation? Is there going to be another one since 2011? Do you anticipate that?
Another
booklet like your dad put out?
No. No, that has evolved into New Gen now.
Okay.
So, yes. So all of our work on varieties now is through New Gen.
Okay. What about I'm growing about 11 different cultivars or varieties, and I noticed on your slide you probably had about 30 different listed. I believe those would probably be more the commercial-oriented varieties. Because I didn't see a couple of the ones I'm growing that are listed. So, and some of those are the Japanese varieties, half of them are about the English varieties or Suffolcosa. So I'm suspecting, are those being tested, or where can I get results on the ones that weren't listed, if there are?
I think there's a fairly comprehensive review of all the varieties to Boxwood Blight.
I think there was like 188 cultivars or something that were listed.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering where the other 100 are, that kind of question.
I try to combine all 4 or 5 studies had been done related with the cultivar screenings of Boxwood, and it is posted on HRI website. Please visit that, and you will see the whole list with, again, comparison of 4 or 5 studies and summarizing all of the results together. So I can share the link with you, and you may post it on your website. So yes, definitely we can provide you the list, the summary of the whole studies.
Final question, I guess, really deals with the White House Garden. Did you all like the changes? Because I understand the removal of the crab apples were not necessarily in everybody's bailiwick, so to speak, and they were not really fond of the monochromatic results that came into effect.
It was so much politics involved there that I mean it was just there was all politics, you know, whether people liked it or not. I mean, and to me it was needed to be done. It needed to be the plants that were in there at the time. They had, up there, particularly around the step landing, they started out with all sempervirens, and then they had come back and put in some winter gems and some different, and it did not fit together very good at all. It was ugly. And now we have all the same cultivars up there, and I think it's a much nicer looking planting. And then the Justin Browers they had leaf miner really, really, really bad, and they can't use neonics in Washington, D.C., because it's in Washington, D.C., and so there's just so much politics involved. I don't see how the people operate up there. I would like to have one more comment, because the lady in the back asked a very good question, I think, about how to replant a site that has blight, and what do you do? And I think the success of replanting a site that has had boxwood blight, it's just like kind of going to your heart doctor and he's saying, well, what's the chance of me dying? Well, he's going to look at your, cholesterol and your heart and this and that and the other and your age and all this. But I think it depends. I put down several factors. One would be obviously the amount of infection that was in there to start with. Were the plants just absolutely eaten up, and was there a good job of removal done? The second thing would be air movement. If it's like right up next to a house, like I showed in the photo here, I think it's way less chance of success in replanting in boxwood than it is if it's out in an open area. Sun and shade, how much shade do the plants get? Weather events, if you plant it and you get 4 hurricanes one fall and you get a little bit of infection, you better be careful. And then obviously the resistance of the variety would be, of the new cultivar that you put in, is going to have some effect. But these best management practices, or these are not really management practices, it's just the site. The site, if it does not have good air movement, sometimes you can't do anything about that.
I think that's going to be all the questions. I see somebody with their hand raised. Maybe you can catch the folks afterwards. The clock is ticking on our videographer, so we want to go ahead and wrap this thing up. I would love to just have y'all, your parting thoughts about the future of Boxwood, or anything else you'd like to say that maybe you didn't get to. So here, I'm going to pass this down, and y'all can all take turns.
Mentioned the American Boxwood Society, and so one more thought on that. Buy the book. Again, I get nothing from the sale of the book. I get no honorariums. I don't even get expenses. I won't tell you how many tens of thousands of dollars I've spent for the books. Lots of good information there. It's a great society. But boxwood is a very enduring plant. You now know the specific gravity, know a lot of the history, and so does compassion for the plant, understanding of the plant. It's a slow-growing plant. Things happen slowly. It's a low-maintenance plant. It honestly is. It doesn't need much care. Just 1 or 2 things done correctly is all it needs. It's a very low-maintenance plant.
I want to thank our funding agency, NIFA USDA, for providing us for 4 years to conduct this, project under, BBIG, by the BBIG team. Our aim and goal is safeguarding the boxwood in the United States and also helping in the world. So developing really great information tied with the research and helping keeping boxwood for forever in our industry.
I also just want to thank everyone for having us. This has been great. I learned so much about boxwoods. I'm not going to lie. I was one of those people that was kind of being leaning more towards the ollie and going, come on, I get so bogged down with all these leaf miner samples. Come on, let's move on. But I was converted today, so thank you. And this has been great. And there was a boxwood that you showed in your presentation that was kind of corkscrewy or kind of curly, and I want one, and I don't know where to get one because I've never seen one. So where can I go to find some of these really cool, unique boxwoods?
Boxwood bonsai? Boxwood bonsai? That's what you want?
No, I want that one that you showed a picture of, and it was kind of curly. It looks like it got sprayed with 2,4-D. The curly.
Curly, yeah.
Oh my God, blew my mind. So thank you.
I got him right. I'm good. Yeah, I just want to thank Dale for the opportunity to be here today, and thank you all for coming out. For me, just a couple of things real quick. There's been a lot of questions about Boxwood Leaf Miner. I have that publication right here. There's also been a lot of questions about Boxwood Blight. I have that publication here. So see me after we finish. Anybody knows me, I'm big on cultural practices, best management practices, and sanitation. So that's going to be my take-home message for you all today.
When box blight first came, it was a rather daunting deal to figure out what to do. But in the last 10 years, believe it or not, 11 years, we've gotten some really good scientists working on it, like this group up here, and Chuan Hong's group, and we're going to figure it out. It's just a matter of time, and we're going to figure these things out. So, and it's through forums like this that we do this. So thank you for the opportunity to come out, and it's been a great meeting.
Thank you, Dale. I really have enjoyed this here. I don't have a boxwood, but I think I'm gonna get me some boxwoods now. and I do know how to take care of it now. I can do pretty good with it. I think I can do pretty good trying to take care of it now, so I know what to look for too. And also, if you want for pesticide points, I will be back at the back table when we finish here, and you can sign for your pesticide points. Thank you, Dale, and thank y'all for coming out to be a part of this program.
I too want to thank Dale. This was his baby. He put this together, because I remember when we first started talking about it. So this was a wonderful idea. It's one of the most informative meetings I've attended in a very long time. And I agree with everything Chris said.